I don't want to set the world on fire.
Hey everyone, this is Violet Irwin. I hope you all are doing well today. You know, I really wasn't gonna record a Car Confessional today, mostly because I really want to do more Property Manifesto Car Confessionals, and I hadn't had kind of an outline prepared for my next one yet, so I wasn't going to do one, but I really am just so alarmed by what's going on with Trump and Syria and all of that, that I felt compelled to at least get on here and have a good rant. Maybe I won't even publish this one, maybe it'll be that crappy of a recording, but at least I can get some stuff off my chest. And there's several things that I kind of want to get off my chest. The first is how frustrating it is to have someone elected who, in theory, between the two different parties, like between the Republicans and Democrats, like in theory, Trump should have been the one who was going to be more peaceful or peace-leaning. I mean, I never really believed that he would, mostly because I've always thought that both parties are the two wings of the same bird of prey, and that they really don't have Americans' interests at heart in either party. And I've always been a big believer, too, in the idea that if voting really mattered, they wouldn't let us do it. Like, if voting really had a big impact on the outcome of our elections or how policy would actually be changed in this country, like, they just would not let us do it. I really firmly believe that. And so for me, it's one of these things where, like, when Trump was elected, I was still skeptical. I didn't trust him at all. And then, you know, he actually did some things that were more positive than I would have thought. Like, I really do like his Supreme Court appointee. You know, certain regulations have been overturned, which are good. But war-wise, Donald Trump is just as bad as Obama, if not worse. Personally, I think he's worse. He's actually, I don't know how many Trumpian libertarians watch my Car Confessionals, but just so y'all know, to the extent that you guys are actually libertarians and not just, you know, conservatives like pretending to be libertarians because you're trying to get your libertarian base or something. But to the extent that there are quote-unquote Trumpian libertarians who don't know this, Donald Trump has already killed more innocent civilians in his drone strikes during his first year of his presidency than Barack Obama killed in his entire term, all 8 years. That's just, so in a year, more innocent people have been killed in drone strikes under Trump's hand than under Obama's, and no one's talking about it, you know? And I do agree with Ron Paul that in America, more often than not, the peace candidate wins. In fact, almost always the peace candidate wins presidential elections. And, you know, if you were watching those debates, you could certainly make an argument that Trump was the peace candidate in those debates between him and Hillary, because Hillary was already talking about starting nuclear war with Russia before she was even in the White House. I mean, she was totally fine with poking that bear. And she wanted to go into Syria right then. You know, it was Trump who kind of said, oh no, like, we shouldn't do that, like, that's a bad idea, because he had these previous tweets about how it was a bad idea, and he, you know, kind of was held to the fire on that initially. But, you know, it's just really frustrating for me to be in a place where, like, I voted for the person who I think would have been the most peaceful of the people actually on the ballot, who was Gary Johnson. And one of the reasons I felt confident voting for him was because I knew that he wouldn't get elected. Because really, he's an idiot. I've got a lot of problems with the Libertarian Party that I'll discuss in another video. But I really just, you know, as bad as Libertarian candidates are, and as dumb as Gary Johnson is, I still think that if he were president, he would not be, you know, stirring up this hornet's nest in Syria. It's like, he doesn't even know where Aleppo is. He's not trying to bomb it, right? But I guess I'm just really, I'm kind of unsure, like, how to proceed as an anti-war person when, even when the American people try to get who in theory, in the lesser of two evil sense, was the peace candidate in, we still end up with, like, crazy warmongers in there. guess I just am like being double black-pilled or like black-pilled again, and that's kind of what I'm going through right now, is just like, because initially, like, I went down this whole libertarian path, and I've always been anti-war, even when I was more just like straight up Republican. Like, I always was anti-war, and I couldn't understand why so many Christians were pro-war. Like, it doesn't make sense. But you know, I went down this path of being like, well, maybe we can get Ron Paul elected. And then I saw how rigged all that shit was, and I saw how fucked up the media was, and it's like, well, there's really no fixing this. And I kind of went more down the that Chris Dwayne route of the only solution to this is to fix your own life, which is actually ultimately kind of a Jordan Peterson solution too. It's like, the solution to World War III is to like clean your room, kind of. Like, the solution to big ass banksters who are funding both parties and funding both sides of wars and all of that is just to, you know, kind of go do my own thing and, you know, live my life the best that I can and take my money out of the system to the best of my abilities and not support the system to the extent that I can, like not work for government, to make my money outside of that, make my money in ways where I'm making, you know, value for people instead of trying to use the government's hand to do it for me. And I went down that path for years, and I just, it was so scary, you know, over the last couple of years to see our freedom of speech come under attack and to see these crazy leftists kind of start to use culture as a hammer in a way that I've never really seen it before. Like, start to use culture to bash in what in my opinion really is a religious philosophy at this point, in terms of the racist, sexist, anti-gay, transphobic bullshit, whatever, postmodernist, cultural Marxist, whatever. You know, that was also alarming to me, that I did kind of have moments where I'm like, well, we might need the government to be doing something so that conservatives and libertarians aren't being like stoned in the streets for just like saying that there's two genders, you know. But I can already see how that's getting twisted, you know. Like, I can see people like Milo, who I just posted a video about Milo. Like, I love Milo. But people like Milo out there talking about how we need the hand of government coming in to deal with Facebook and deal with Twitter, because they're the biggest threat to our free speech and all of that. And I'm just like, no, like, no. You know, like, we can never forget that the government is the greatest evil, you know. And I do think there's a role for government, there's a purpose for government, because force is necessary in some instances, but for the most part it's not. And we can't let our fear of things let us go to a place where we're just willing to let the government have all this power that we would never give them just because we're scared of some like purple-haired feminists or like blue-haired feminists or like some Antifa morons. You know, it's like all these people are unemployed and childless. Like, their generation will peter off, and we just need to be just as loud as them. But I guess the reason why I'm saying I'm getting black-pilled again is because for a bit I thought that we might be able to avoid really horrible war. And personally, I'm of the belief that we can't avoid horrible financial crisis. I think that's inevitable, mostly because of how the Federal Reserve is set up. I don't think that we can avoid kind of a cultural reboot, which we're going through right now, which is why you see Hollywood crumbling. You know, you see our media crumbling, our news media. You see religiosity being redefined and rethought out, you know, like there's kind of a cultural upheaval happening. So I think the financial crisis and the cultural crisis were inevitable, but, you know, I just, as a libertarian who kind of came from the Ron Paul, Rothbard persuasion, you know, war to me is just the ultimate crime. And it just seems like no matter how anti-war the American people are, no matter whether or not, I mean, personally, I already knew this, but no matter which party's in office, no matter whether or not the problems that are happening abroad are our fault, whether or not they're related to our national security, whether or not they're based on lies, our actions, whether or not, you know, we've actually investigated stuff before trying to make these decisions or trying to, you know, vandalize and destroy property. Like, there's just been, like, it just seems like no matter what the American people do, like, we can't get our government to stop blowing the crap out of the Middle East. Maybe this will be one that I just don't edit. This can be like Violet Irwin Unscripted, and you can see how often I actually trip over my own words. But what can the American people do to get our government to stop fucking starting these wars? Do we need to abolish the federal government to have that happen? Because here's the thing. I'm gonna tell y'all a secret, okay? I've got aspirations to be the governor of Colorado at some point. And for those of you who don't know, Violet Irwin's actually a pen name. I'll let you guys know what my real name is at some point, I'm sure. But I do have aspirations to be governor of Colorado under my real name. And I guess the reason I bring that up is because there are so many times where I've just thought, like, damn, if only I were the governor, I could John Hancock style, you know, have my signature on the secession papers from the United States. And I have thought about that, because at this point, I don't think the federal government is assisting us very much anymore. You know, I think that to the extent that it facilitates interactions between the states, that's really important. Like, we have federal courts to hear diversity cases between, you know, different state parties. And I do think that we need to have, like, if you're going to be a country, you need to have an entity that kind of can be what interacts between you and other countries, right? So if the United States is going to be an entity, we kind of need like bodies there that can interact with other countries and or, you know, set our foreign policy. Like, I do think that's actually something that is within the federal government's role, is to wage war to the extent that it's necessary. The issue I'm having is that this federal government seems to wage war no matter what is in the interests of the country. And you guys have watched, I mean, hopefully, you guys have watched my video about congressional recklessness and how they're driving blindfolded. And I think the same thing, you know, in terms of war. They really have just reneged all of their war powers to the president and just allowed our American presidents to do whatever the fuck they want in terms of war. And now it seems like no matter which president we put in there, and I've known this since 2012. I mean, I've just known this based on looking at our track record in terms of our presidencies. Like, no matter who you put in there, like this military-industrial complex thing, that industry just keeps pushing the war drums, you know, keeps beating the war drums, keeps pushing war forward. And I've just started thinking that the only way to end these wars might be to abolish the federal government. Because it doesn't seem like changing the representatives in terms of the president affects that. Oh shit, that was my phone making noise. I really should silence that. But it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the president's judgment anymore. I mean, Congress has basically just tied their hands and said they're not going to even question like what the president does in terms of war. And the thing about Congress doing that too is, like, I have been such a vocal advocate to my friends and family and everyone who will listen that you need to vote out your congressmen who have been allowing this stuff to happen. Like, if you've got a congressman up in there who voted yes on the Patriot Act, who voted yes on Obamacare, who voted, you know, for anything that's bullshit like that, and continues to sit in Congress, and or anyone that you've elected in the hopes of actually making change, who's just been sitting in there and hasn't actually voted on any of the legislation that you want, like, you gotta vote those assholes out of there, because these fools are gonna destroy the world. Like, people try to tell me when I talk about secession or, you know, states just saying fuck this constitution because we created a federal government that is destroying, like, the world. You know, people want to tell me that I'm the radical one, and it's like, We have a federal government that's trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. We've got a Congress that constantly breaches their fiduciary duties to the United States. We've got a president who is unaccountable to the American people, not just Trump, but you know, any president. They always do whatever they want. They write law, which they're not supposed to do. They wage war, which they're not supposed to do. They take kickbacks they're not supposed to take. They lie to the American people all the time. You know, we've got a president in the White House right now who has killed more innocent civilians in drone strikes in the last year than the previous president killed in the last 8 years. And that president killed more drone strikes than all of the previous presidents combined, right? So it's just like, am I really that extreme and thinking this might be the solution? Because here's the thing, people want to talk about, oh, what about my medical bills? Like, who's gonna pay, who's gonna write my social security check? It's like, what about goddamn nuclear fallout? Which would you rather? Would you rather miss a check or have the world destroyed in goddamn nuclear war? I feel like the check could wait. Sorry, I'm getting a little mad just talking about it. But I'm kind of at a loss, and that's why I'm doing this sort of unscripted, uncensored Car Confessional, because I genuinely, I don't know what to do at this point. Most Americans are anti-war, even though the left has been deafeningly silent on this issue. You know, and to the extent that there's people in these Middle Eastern countries that are average Joes, like even those people who are, you know, militant Muslims, I still don't think that they would want their children to grow up in a nuclear holocaust, right? I don't think the Russians want that. What good would that be? I don't think that the Russian citizenry, they don't care about that. But we have these psychopathic people who are at the head of all of these governments. And these psychopaths, here's the thing, okay? I'm gonna give y'all a little background on psychopathy, okay? I was a psychology major as an undergraduate, and this was always one of my favorite areas to study, was psychopathy, because it's just so fascinating to me that any human could be like this and that these humans exist. But psychopaths are wolves in sheep's clothing, okay? That's the best way to put it. They are people who can make themselves come off as gentle and sweet and kind and whatever, and often they'll actually be very attractive individuals who keep themselves very clean and put together. Like, they almost seem trustworthy. But the thing about psychopaths is they don't plan more than one step ahead ever. And that's why they always end up getting caught, okay? Because what psychopaths do is they act on what is going to benefit me the most right now. And they do that. No, damned the future consequences, right? What's gonna make me feel good right now? What's gonna get me money right now? What's gonna get me off right now? That's how psychopaths operate, okay? So these big serial killer murder types, they're not thinking about, oh, what happens if I go to prison for the rest of my life, right? What happens if I get the death penalty? What happens if I'm vilified by the whole world? Like, none of that is what they're thinking about. They're thinking about, like, man, I really wish that I could take out some of my anger and my vengefulness. I'm just gonna do it because I can, and I can now, and that option's here, right? Consequences be damned. That's like the psychopath's motto. And let me tell you guys something else about psychopaths. Psychopaths make up 1% of our population. Now, 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about 1 in every 100 people has no empathy for another human being, that's a lot of people once you get to the whole country. And when you think about where people with these kind of tendencies would flock, clearly they're going to flock to government. Psychopaths love being able to force their way. That's their thing, right? If they could get what they want now instead of later, that's what they're gonna do. And if they can do it at the hand of the gun, well, all the much better, because that way they ensure it gets done, right? So government, especially super powerful government positions, is a natural place for psychopaths to flock, and they do. So when you think about this in context, when you think about what, you know, like per capita, how many people in Washington, D.C. are psychopaths, it's a lot higher than the rest of the country, okay? I would also say that's true of Hollywood, like Los Angeles, and New York City, because of Wall Street. Because if you think about it, it's like Wall Street is where all the money is to be made, right? Like really big money. So that's like, I'll go to Wall Street for that. I can fraud my way to money as a psychopath, right? And then for Los Angeles, it's like I can get fame and prestige or whatever and be in the limelight or whatever. And that's where I'll go to have that, you know, to stroke the psychopath's ego. You go to LA, right? But then if you just want power, if you're bloodthirsty, if you just, you know, you're going to Washington, D.C. And that's why I always call Washington, D.C. a den of vipers, because to me, just all the most horrible people in America flock to Washington, D.C. And that's not to say there aren't some good people there, but in general, the people who love D.C., who want to be in D.C., who want to be part of that scene, horrible people, okay? Now, if Washington, D.C., as I posit, and Congress and politicians have a higher per capita ratio of psychopaths than other parts of the country and other professions, I mean, think about what these people are willing to do because they don't care about consequences, right? I mean, we're talking about people who are just willing to lie through their teeth with consequences be damned. I mean, think about Hillary Clinton. Like, this woman has committed so many crimes that are provable on the books and nothing has happened, right? But this woman thinks that she can just go out there and lie through her teeth and people will believe her. And the thing is, people do. People do believe her. People believe psychopaths all the damn time. And if you want to say that, you know, you trust all of our politicians, I mean, I just can't help but think that you're naive, you know? So, we've got this high concentration of psychopaths who have all the war powers. And they're not scared to lie about it. They're not scared to fake stuff. Little history lesson for y'all, if you guys don't know this. The Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened, okay? If you don't know what the Gulf of Tonkin incident is, the Gulf of Tonkin incident is the event, the alleged event that led us into our war in Vietnam, okay? In Vietnam is, even without that Gulf of Tonkin, like Gulf of Tonkin being a hoax aside, Vietnam is already thought of as one of our most bullshit wars. And think about how many American youth died in Vietnam because of the draft. I mean, you think about like the hippies and the 70s and all of that. It's like so many American men were drafted, sent to Vietnam, and just fucking died for no reason. Okay? Because here's the thing. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, and I don't have my materials with me, and like I said, this is just kind of a stream of consciousness, uncensored today. But the Gulf of Tonkin incident was basically a situation wherein one of our ships was allegedly attacked by like a Vietnamese ship or something of that nature, and that's kind of why we ended up going to Vietnam, because it was like, look, they attacked us, see? We can't not now, right? The whole like stopping ideas with bombs thing wasn't selling the war enough, so they kind of had to come up with some other bullshit reason for us to go there. And as a side note, how great of a job do we do stopping commies, am I right? With all that war. Thank God we killed all those people in Vietnam and, you know, had so many Americans die for the sake of stopping communism, right? Because really, there's no commies in America now. It's not like communism and neo-Marxism isn't having a huge resurgence as the result of, I don't know, us maybe trying to bomb the crap out of the whole damn world? Sorry. Woo! War really gets me, guys. It gets me more than anything. So this is kind of me just expressing to my followers and to whoever will listen how dangerous I think this situation is. And we've got all these psychopaths in Washington, D.C. who would not think twice about doing this. Because here's the thing. they can benefit financially from this. They can get all of their military contractors and all of their whatever kickbacks from all the bribes that aren't prosecuted by our horrible prosecutors. You know, it's a whole other video, like I said. It's just, these people, for a buck, would definitely be willing to risk nuclear fallout across the whole world. Don't even blink at that. They'll do it. Because in their mind, they're psychopaths. They're not thinking 10 steps ahead. They're only thinking at this step. And in this step, they say, well, if we can, you know, get Assad out of power in Syria, maybe that means that we can get more oil money out of them. Or maybe that means we can put the squeeze on the next dictator so they'll actually listen to us. Or, you know, whatever. There's some power-related, money-related reason why these politicians and warmongers want to go get this action going in Syria, okay? And I'll tell you what, it's not our safety. It has nothing to do with our safety. It also has nothing to do with the atrocities that are happening in Syria. Because here's the other thing. Atrocities are happening all over the damn world. I mean, even in Venezuela. I think you could argue that Venezuela is a more pressing concern than what's happening in Syria, because frankly, ISIS was on the run in Syria. They were on the way out. I've been listening to Vanessa Beeley, okay? She's actually in fucking Syria. She was living in Damascus, all right? The people the United States has been helping in Syria are the terrorists, okay? The people the United States are trying to help in Syria are the same people who all of these right-wing nutjobs want to complain about, right? Like they're... And here's the thing. I'm so alarmed by the barbarism committed by a lot of these Muslims in, you know, Europe, right? And actually in the United States more and more. But like the shit that's happening in the UK with these rape gangs, right? The stuff that's happening in the stuff that's happening in Sweden, where you hear stories about a girl walking home and she's followed by a group of 8 men. It's like, oh my God. Like, you know, like the kind of torture and barbarity that's happening in the UK and across Europe to white women, especially at the hands of, you know, these migrant men, is just so horrifying, and like, you know, it makes me want to cry, like, thinking about it. But I really don't think that the solution to that is just to keep bombing the damn Middle East. The solution to having floods of migrants coming into the United States is to not keep bombing the damn Middle East. Like, if there were specific terror cells plotting threats against the United States, we have an intelligence organization situation, right? Or an intelligence community that supports that. Wow, I really have been talking great for the last minute here. We have an intelligence community that is supposed to be seeking out, finding, and destroying those threats, okay? We should not be engaging in any kind of all-out warfare against countries based on terrorist insurgencies that pose a threat to the United States. Because here's the thing, there's a lot of innocent women, children, and men just living in these countries who don't want to bomb the crap out of America. And who, yeah, okay, so people want to talk about the Islamic faith and how really true believers of that faith, you know, kind of want to establish a new caliphate, a world caliphate, you know, and obviously we can't have people coming into our countries trying to take over and invade us. You know, that's a problem. But I think that so many people have gotten a bit wrapped up in this, like, all Muslims are trying to take over us, that they think that now it's okay for us to just go into some of these countries and just bomb them, because it's like, well, these are people who want the destruction of America anyway. It's like, but you don't know that. You actually don't know that. And you also don't know how people can change. And moreover, to the extent that a lot of people in these countries are living in horrifically oppressive regimes, how many people do we know that are Muslims who say that they believe all of these things who actually don't? You know? Like, how many, for example, how many Christians would say that they, you know, are super hardcore, diehard Christians, but, you know, when you get into the nitpicky details about, like, for example, whether or not wars need to be just wars before they're waged, you can tell that people don't actually always ascribe to all of the tenets of their beliefs, you know? So, I just want people to keep in mind, because I just want people to keep in mind that the people living in Muslim countries, even if on a survey they say they believe certain things, might not believe that stuff, especially when you're in a position where blasphemy is punishable by death, right? So, and I just look at people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Majid Nawaz, who were practicing Muslims and decided they didn't want to do that anymore, you know? And I feel like people want to paint pretty much the entire Muslim world is just fucked, right? It's like, they're just fucked. Islam is taken over. There's nothing that can be done. And, you know, if our national security is a threat, we shouldn't feel guilty bombing, you know, these countries because it's like not our concern or something. It's like, they're Muslims. They want to destroy us anyway, right? There's like some weird stuff with that. And I don't want our hatred of Islam and our hatred of the horrible atrocities and injustices that are perpetuated in Muslim countries to let us think that the individuals living in those countries aren't individuals anymore. Because the thing about the West is that we care about individuals, right? Like, the whole idea about Western civilization and this whole fight for Western civilization that we've all been waging, quote unquote, is that we care about individual rights and individual liberties and individual life. And if we're going to go down this path where we're going to be real critical of an ideology, like we rightly should be, because Islam is fucked up, you know, the more I learn about it, the more freaked out I get, right? But that doesn't mean anything necessarily about the individuals who preach it, because the thing is, if Christians were doing horrible things in the name of Jesus, I would be criticizing them just as much, you know? But the issue is that there's horrible things being done in the name of an ideology that I'm not on board with. But we have so many individuals involved with that ideology who frankly have been propagandized their whole life into it. It's not like these people in these countries were like given a nice dose of Christianity and of Islam and are just like, no, you know what, fuck the Christians. You know, they're in a situation where they've been told that they're going to their respective hell or whatever if they don't wear a hijab, right? Or they're going to their respective hell if they don't marry someone who was assigned to be married to them. So I just think that I think that we're getting dangerously close to vilifying like half of the world for their ideology, instead of seeing that there's potential in each and every single one of those individuals to come around. And Majid Nawaz is a great example of that, because he was full-blown radicalized, like gonna do terrorism, Islam, and he came all the way back to Enlightenment values. So, you know, that's kind of another point. And I know that this is gonna be a long stream of consciousness, like I said. Maybe this will be my least liked video or something. Maybe no one will watch it, but I just had to get out some of these thoughts about war and about where we're going, because part of the reason why I went down that whole stream of consciousness about Islam and war is because I do think that if you maintain your immigration situation appropriately, you don't actually need to worry about being invaded the way that Europe has been invaded. And I do think that Europe has a civil war coming, but I don't think America has to go down that route necessarily. And I also think that it's just really dangerous to start brushing a whole religious group so negatively, because while Muslims are not a race, they're not. I still don't think that we want to be like, there is a religiosity in there, and there are a lot of Muslims who, kind of like a lot of Christians, just go through the motions day to day and don't even think about, like, this whole caliphate thing. And I just think we're getting dangerously close to a place where people just don't care about the lives of innocent people that are lost in Muslim countries as much as they should. And, you know, places like Syria, I feel like one of the reasons why the warmongers have been able to beat the drum so much is because there's been so much vilification of Middle Easterners and of Muslims in general. And it's not without its reasons for the vilification. It's just that there seems like there's an individual potential situation lacking in our analysis of this. And it really saddens me. It saddens me so much that the left is not anti-war anymore. Like, this is switching topics. But to know a little bit about me, like, I was kind of a Republican type early on in college, mostly because, you know, I grew up in a pretty traditional Catholic family, and that's kind of like just how my family talked. But when I was in college, I got a little bit more flexible because I like my weed. So that's always one journey to the left a little bit on that. But also, you know, I was really frustrated with a lot of the kind of, like, I didn't really think that the church's approach to, like, gay marriage was really appropriate, because I've never thought that Christ really wanted to use the state as a hammer to mandate morality. Like, I really don't see that in Christ's teachings at all. So I've always thought that marriage shouldn't have been a part of the state, so that kind of had me moving left. I was always pro-life, and I still am. But it was one of those things where in college, I actually went from being like a conservative to mostly a liberal. And I found more bedfellows with liberals for a very long time because of my libertarian beliefs as well. Like, once I kind of evolved from a liberal into more of a libertarian, which strangely enough ended up bringing me closer to conservatives, like, later. It's like, it was one of those things where I was a conservative and I didn't really like that because I thought it was too restrictive in terms of people's social lives, and culturally it was too restrictive. But then when I kind of got to the liberal side, I thought that it was, like, too harsh in terms of people's lives, and like I said, with the right to life, but also, like, I think that their, like, welfare or nothing, like, super intense welfare or nothing stance, like, I just couldn't get on board with that. But I at least I could sympathize with their desire to want to help the poor. And I had to leave the right, because the right was just a bunch of warmongering nut jobs. Like, I just couldn't do that. And then, you know, I'm on the left, and then they're too crazy with the abortion thing, they're too crazy with the welfare stuff, and I just, you know, that's when I became a libertarian. And for so long, it's like, the left was still more aligned with me because they were the anti-war ones, and that was really my, like, that was really a big issue for me. And it's one of the reasons why I became a libertarian too, is because they're, in my opinion, they're the most anti-war of the, like, kind of three ideologies there, of, like, conservative, liberal, and libertarian. Like, libertarians are the most anti-war because we've got the non-aggression principle backing us. You know, like, that's kind of our driving force. And as I'll make in a later video, in my property manifesto, in terms of my propertarian views, war is the ultimate crime in that analysis as well. So, but it's really frustrating for me because over the last week, like, I look at my Twitter, I follow a lot of liberals, you know, like, I follow a lot because I want to read both sides' news to know what people are talking about. But it's like Trump is talking about initiating military action that could literally cause World War III and, like, a nuclear fallout. You know, the kind of stuff that we've all, like, been scared about since the Cold War, you know, like, he's talking about that really relaxed like. And you would think that these people who want to vilify Trump for everything, right? Like, they want to vilify Trump for, like, what was it? like his ketchup usage or something, or like they want to vilify him for his hair, or for like they want to vilify you know, his wife's shoes, or like her fashion choices. You know, like they will dig into anything. But then when he threatens to do something that could cause nuclear war, oh yeah, no, that's good. That's fucking good. Yeah, love that. Sounds real awesome. Sounds like something that we don't need to criticize at all. And then Hillary Clinton gets out there and is like, fuck yeah, let's bomb Syria. Damn right we should bomb Syria. Finally, Trump did something good. And the media is just loving it, you know? Outside of Tucker Carlson, who, he's always got this like dumbfounded look on his face that I just can't get past. But anyway, like I don't watch his show regularly, but if he has a clip that's a hot button clip, I'll like go find it online or whatever. But you know, he actually spoke about how this was a really bad idea. But other than that, I mean, the Fox News, MSNBC, everyone's on board. Everyone says go war, you know? It's like, this is fucked up. This is fucked up. None of it, like the American people don't want war. It's only you psychopathic nut jobs who want it, you know? And we've been trying, like even Obama was elected as a peace candidate, you know? And I just wonder, where are the peacemakers? Where are they? You know, because the thing is, like, there's been a lot of good work done in the Republican Party in terms of pushing neocons to the fringes and making them be the more radical ones. But people think that because Trump is involved, that means that we can trust the Republican Party. It's like, no fucking way we can't trust the Republican Party. Do you remember Iraq? Do you remember the fact that they started the longest war in American history? Over stuff that is, you know, like, we went into Iraq over stuff that wasn't even related to our own security. We've been fighting this war in Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden's been dead for a long time, but we're still up in there. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's like an Islamic situation wherein people are kind of trying to take over the United States. But people are talking about that like it's new. Right? Like people are talking about it like Muslims have never wanted to do that. And all of a sudden, now they want to take over America. It's like, there have been radical Muslims trying to take over the Western world for centuries and centuries. The only difference is that we have this PC nonsense that has prevented us from being able to actually talk about the ones who are kind of doing it, right? So we don't need to be fighting all these endless wars abroad to deal with the Muslim immigration problem. First of all, we need to make sure that people who are coming into the United States get assimilated into American Western culture. That's kind of the problem, really, we have, is that these people aren't getting assimilated. But, you know, to bomb these countries and just enrage them because innocent women and children are dying, you know, that is not helping our case. That's making more radicals over there, okay? And I am fully in favor of military actions that are quick and necessary, you know? Like I said, you know where ISIS is chilling, go find them, use all your intelligence, this huge spy state that you've created. If it exists, use that. You know, if you're gonna use that in the right way, you should be at least using it to execute quick, simple missions that can take care of the problems that we're worried about, you know? But instead of doing that, what does the federal government do? The federal government sends weapons to ISIS, okay? That's what the federal government does. The federal government arms rebels to overthrow dictators and then replace that dictator with some other American dictator puppet that will then abide by whatever the federal government tells them to do. And in order to do that, we have to arm rebels and give them weaponry. America is the biggest arms dealer in the world. Our federal government is the hugest arms dealer in the world. We supply most of the terrorists with their guns. You know, all these leftists want to talk about, oh, gun control, gun control. It's like, where do you think terrorists get their goddamn AKs? It's from the federal government. It's with your tax money, you assholes. Jesus. So, I digress. I just wonder where the goddamn left is criticizing Trump on this. This is the stuff that he needs to be criticized on. This is the stuff that actually puts our entire country at risk, that puts the world at risk. You know, people want to talk about how dangerous Trump is. It's like, this is the dangerous stuff, and you guys are silent. Not only are you silent, Hillary Clinton's down. Hillary Clinton is like pro-Trump on this, you know? And so, anyway, enough people have ranted at Trump on Facebook, or excuse me, well, I guess on Facebook. I don't really use Facebook anymore, so whatever. But for people who are on Twitter, like people, a lot of Trump's constituents have been railing and reaming him for this, because it's like, a lot of his constituents, as many of them try to say are conservative, really are more libertarian than they think. They just don't want to call themselves libertarian because they think that libertarian means that all you do is smoke weed and buy Bitcoin, and that you don't believe in borders. But, you know, the libertarians that don't believe in borders are the minority of libertarians. The libertarians who are 100% gung-ho for Bitcoin over something like gold are the minority, okay? So what libertarianism really means is that you want the individual to have more authority than the government when it comes to your personal life. And moreover, that you don't want people to be aggressing against other people, and that if they do that, you know, that's something that should be punishable. Like, that's sort of the deal with that. But that's kind of a non-point. But the reason I mention it is because Trump's constituents are not pro-war, right? We've got this weird thing where we have a Republican president who was elected by a group of people who are not pro-war. Because the thing is, the neocon Republican types, like those voters, didn't like Trump and didn't want Trump as the nominee, right? Like, they didn't want him to be the one who was chosen because he was actually talking peace-like at the time. Although personally, I think that there's other people behind the strings who definitely wanted Trump in, and who knew they could get him in, and who knew that the media would just be all over him. Anyway, that's another video. And I'll wrap this up. I'm sorry, guys. This is gonna be really long. And I'm actually not gonna edit it at all. I'm just gonna put it online. But I really hope and pray that we don't go through this war in Syria. I hope that Donald Trump will listen to his constituents to kind of back out, like he's kind of been talking about, because his base has really been enraged, as they should be. I didn't even vote for Trump, and I think that his base should be enraged. But I really hope this doesn't happen. I beg all of my, subscribers that get to this part of the video, if you're still listening, to contact your congressman, and your senators and tell them that you don't want this war, that you want the president to be held accountable, and all of that. I did it. I actually picked up the phone. I didn't even email them. I called my senator. I called both of my senators, and I called my congresswoman directly and left them a message with my own voice telling them that I don't want this war and I don't want any of this, and I hope that you all will do the same. And I know that this has been kind of a long, just rant, stream of consciousness, but it was just something I needed to get out there. This has just been on my mind, this whole war in Syria potentially leading to World War III, and I really trust Gerald Celente, and he kind of sees it progressing, and it's scary. I'm scared. I'm scared about, like, my fears of this fourth turning coming into fruition, and I'm kind of prepared for economic fallout. I'm kind of prepared for cultural stuff getting fucked up, but there's nothing you can do to really prepare for a nuclear bomb hitting your city. Like, there's no preparing for that. So we all just have to pray that God is good, and that we can get out of this hellscape that could be forming around us. And call your congressman, damn it, and tell them that you don't want more war. War is a racket. We should not go to a war based on another lie. And that's the other thing that I didn't even get to touch on, is the whole idea that Assad would be bombing or using chemical weapons on his own people. It's like, Yes, governments will do that to their own people. I don't doubt that a government would do something like that to his own people. I doubt that Assad, in the position he's in, would risk losing, frankly, like, Assad knows that if he does shit like that, the United States is going to come in there, right? Because we've been threatening to do that, as is, other parts of the world. So I just think that if Assad really was trying to, if Assad was acting in his own best interests, he would not be attacking his people with chemical weapons at this time. And especially when he was getting more love from his people, because he had kind of helped facilitate getting rid of ISIS to the extent that they've been gotten rid of in Syria. So, for Assad's political je ne sais quoi, it really would not be in his best interest to conduct a chemical attack. And it's not that he couldn't do it or wouldn't do it, it's just that he probably didn't, And the other thing is, even if he did, I still don't think that that gives us justification to go poke a hornet's nest that could start a nuclear war. I really don't think it is. There's plenty of places around the world that have crises that could use our intervention, but that doesn't mean we need to go to all of them, okay? Like I mentioned before about Venezuela, but also South Africa is on the brink of having like white genocide occur, like literal white genocide. Like, I'm one of these people who always kind of thought that that people who talked about white genocide were really kind of overreacting in terms of like population replacement being quote unquote genocide. But this is a different thing. I mean, South Africa is in a place where they're about to just start they're about to take all the land from the whites, and who knows what they're gonna do once they steal all that land. They passed that into law, but who knows what they're actually gonna do once they steal that land. I mean, oh my God. So, and North Korea, I mean, my God, we can see their concentration camps from space. But, oh no, we have to go deal with Syria. That's the most pressing thing. It's like, no, we don't. We really don't. And we especially don't without any proof. So first of all, prove this chemical attack happened, and then we can discuss whether or not that's something that actually warrants our intervention. But even if the attack did happen, I think the risk of nuclear war far outweighs any benefit that we would provide by dropping bombs on them in Syria, or by doing another, regime change situation. That's worked out so well in every damn country we've ever tried it before. So, I just wanted to add on that little bit about Assad just to get my thoughts on that end. But really, I don't believe he did it. Even if he did it, I don't think it's grounds to go in there. And even if it were grounds to go in there, I still think that we should be having a conversation about it that's more than over Twitter. And also, I think that Congress should be the one making the decision ultimately in the end, should all of those other prerequisites be met. And even in that case, I still would hope that Congress would say that, the loss of innocent life here is probably not going to be worth engaging in another regime change situation, given how poorly that's gone in the past, So anyway, thank you all so much for watching this video and for listening to me rant on and on about war and why we shouldn't go to war in Syria, and about why we go to wars, and about why psychopaths want to go to war, and about why so many psychopaths are in Washington, and about the left and where they've gone, and the anti-war left. And just thank you so much for listening to this. I know it's been super long. I hope you've enjoyed this version of me, totally unedited and unscripted, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
I just want to start a flame in your heart.